Hey guys, so today I've got my 1 month 1 palette wrap up on my Anastasia Norvina palette. This was the palette that I challenged myself to use throughout August. It was my goal to dip into at least 2 shades of this palette every day that I wore makeup this month and to use each shade 3 times. And I did meet that goal. I also picked out 4 bonus singles to work on this month, and I chose 4 ColourPop singles. They were the shades Howlin', Prowlin', Earthshine, and Thank You Next. And each of these shades I used exactly 3 times as well. So basically, the purpose of this 1 month 1 palette challenge is to see how many different looks I can get out of one palette. It really helps me get to know my palettes, even the ones that I've had in my collection for 2-3 years. I think this one I've had for 3 years now. Even if I think I know it, I always get to know it even better when I challenge myself to use it intensively for a month. And I feel like I fell even more in love with this palette this month than I was before. I already loved it, but now definitely one of my top 3 palettes. I just cannot begin to explain how much fun I had with this. So the other thing I wanted to see was how many shades I could hit pan on, and I feel like I'm kind of spoiling it by holding it up here, but I already had hit pan on the shade Dazzling here, and I'm so excited to say I actually hit pan on 2 additional shades this month. The first shade I hit pan on was Dreamer. This shade I used almost every single day as an inner corner highlight. Today I'm wearing that on my lid and like the inner third of my lid. And then the shade that I just hit pan on a few days ago is the shade Summer. I love this shade. It's like a sort of bronzy gold color. That I have on the middle of my lid today. I actually filmed an Instagram reel of this look, so I should have that up soon. I have a couple of Instagram reels using this palette that have gone up throughout the past month. So those are the 3 shades I hit pan on. Now I have to say I'm a little bummed that I didn't also hit pan on Base, which is this matte cream color, because this shade I used every day and I feel like I'm so close to hitting pan on it. I feel like I'm probably just like a couple of uses away from hitting pan. I really thought I could do it, but I just did not quite get there this month. Either way, I'm still really happy to now have 3 pans in this palette. And I feel like if I were to continue using this for another month, I would probably hit pan on quite a few more shades. So I am very happy with that progress. Sometimes in these 1 month 1 palettes, I don't hit any pans, especially if it's a newer palette. But I think this was my most successful month as far as hitting pan on shades. I'm gonna pop some progress photos on the screen here so that you can see how the palette looks now versus at the start of the month. You'll see those shades that I hit pan on. You'll see how I did expand the pan on Dazzling, and then I do have just a lot of wear on all the other shades, really. A lot of pretty big dips going on, even in some of those matte shades. Base has a big dip. Incense, Love, Wild Child, Rose Gold, Celestial, all of those shades have a lot of wear on them. So honestly, I was just thinking to myself, if I ever were to do a pan that palette, I've never done one before, but I could see myself actually having a lot of fun with this in a pan that palette. Is that something you guys would be interested in? I haven't decided if I'm going to do it, but maybe next year I would be willing to rise to the challenge, and I think this would be a good one to pick because I don't think I'd get tired of this palette, and it's such a good palette for all seasons. So let me know your thoughts on that. I have gotten quite a few requests to do a pan that palette, and I just haven't done one just because I feel like I would get tired of the palette, or it would kind of, I don't know, I feel like I'd get into a rut, but I don't know. I feel like this is one that I could realistically try that out with and see. But anyway, very happy with all of that progress. For the singles, like I said, I only used each of these 3 times, which is still really good, I think, because I neglect my magnetic singles. I don't know why, but I just forget that I have them, so I'm happy to have used them a few times this month. And I definitely do have a dip in Prowlin' and Earthshine. Thank You Next is this kind of like reddish copper duochrome. Really pretty color, but I'm not a huge fan of the texture of this shadow. It's very flaky and dry, so you have to be careful with it. It can have a lot of fallout and it's just kind of crumbly. So I feel like your best bet is to use it with like a wet brush or to like apply it with a finger over glitter glue. And then Howlin', I've used this shade a lot, but it's a very densely packed matte, so I just feel like you don't see much progress on that shade. But I did feel like those bonus singles went really nicely with Norvina. Nice little addition of some purples there, and then that fun kind of rose gold was also really fun. So in my intro to this 1 month, 1 palette, I did a palette bingo between all these shades, so you can see the look I came out with. It was a very interesting look because it was a mix of like really warm and really cool tones, but it was a lot of fun. So I'm also going to pop up a photo on the screen that shows you how many times I used each of these shades. And my most used shade this month was Base, which is another reason why I'm so surprised I didn't hit pan on this, but I used this shade 30 times, basically every day of the month. I think there may have been 1 or 2 days that I didn't wear makeup this month, but other than that, I wore it with every single eyeshadow look as my brow bone highlight, and I always use that type of a shade to kind of clean up the edges of my look, so it really comes in handy, but I have not hit pan on that shade yet. The shade that I used the second highest number of times was Dreamer, which I did hit pan on, and the pan on this looks really weird. It's got this kind of dark discoloration to it. I posted about that on my Instagram stories asking like if anybody knew what that was all about, because the other 2 shades I've hit pan on, Summer and Dazzling, don't seem to have that weird discoloration. A lot of people said they'd had this with either this palette or other ABH palettes, especially the shimmers, although some people said they had it with their mattes too. It must just have something to do with the formulation of these shadows, and maybe some ingredient in there is kind of reacting with the metal, causing some kind of rust or corrosion, but I don't think it's mold. So I feel like it kind of looks like that, but I'm pretty positive that's not what it is. The shade still performs fine. I've still been using it. It's kind of strange that that one did it, but not the other 2 shimmers in here. I'll be curious to see if any of the other pans have that weird discoloration. But that shade I used a ton, mostly as an inner corner highlight. In 3rd place for number of uses was the shade Volatile, which is this matte, taupey, grayish brown. Really useful color. I have that on my inner corner and lower lash line today, and that shade I used 13 times. So big jump between that and my second highest used shade. Then Incense I used 10 times. I'm surprised I used Incense less than Volatile, but this is a nice just medium brown. Great as a crease color, transition color, just a useful shade. Then I used Summer 9 times. I love that shade. It's so pretty. Just a great lid shade. The shimmers in this palette are absolutely to die for, especially Dazzling, Rose Gold, and Summer. Those are just so incredibly foiled. I mean, let me just do some finger swatches for you right now. So impactful. Look at those. I mean, that was just barely tapping my finger in there. Just one swipe. Amazing. So those are my 3 favorite shades in the palette, especially I think Rose Gold is my favorite. I talked about that in my video where I talked about my favorite and least favorite shade in all of my high-end palettes. But it's funny because I actually used Rose Gold only 3 times this month, and I can't explain why that is. It still is my favorite shade in the palette, like I can tell you that for sure, but I think I was almost subconsciously not wanting to hit pan on that shade, even though I know that's silly. I would like to hit pan on it eventually, but I just kind of want to savor that color because it's so special to me. But anyway, I used Love and Passion 7 times each. Love is the matte pink, Passion is that matte burgundy shade. Another couple of beautiful shades for like kind of berry fall looks. Soul I used 5 times, Eccentric I used 5 times, Wild Child and Dazzling I used 4 times each. Then the shades that I only managed to use 3 times, which was kind of like my minimum number that I wanted to use them, was Rose Gold, like I said, Celestial, that sort of medium, shimmery, cool toned purple, and Drama. Drama is my least favorite shade in the palette. I've said before, I would prefer if that were like a matte purple. I think I'd like it a little bit more, but still a pretty color. Just not a go-to shade for me personally. And Celestial, I just don't do purple looks a whole lot, although in my last kind of get ready with me, it was like a life update video, I did use that shade along with some of these bonus singles. Celestial and Earthshine make a really pretty pair. Earthshine I really like as like a topper shade because it's this kind of sheer duochrome blurple. One of my subscribers, Jenna, I think it was, taught me that word, and I like that a lot. So the second half, or like the end part of this video, is going to be a compilation of all the looks that I did with this palette this month. Now, my kind of rules or like my guidelines that I set for myself, like I said before, I did challenge myself to use at least 2 shades from this palette every day that I wore makeup, and I'm allowed to pull in other palettes or pair it with other palettes. There were a few other palettes that I was testing out this month, and I did some looks with those, and for those looks I pretty much only used these 2 shades, Dreamer and Base, because these are nice kind of staple colors. They don't really distract from, you know, other palettes or other color stories. So there were quite a few days where I only used those 2 and I decided to wear another main palette. So I probably will just not include those looks in this video because it's not really starring this palette too much, and you'll get to see both of those shades in action throughout like all the other looks. Now, the first week of this month, I also had my Bold Lipstick Week challenge going on, and in that video, I did basically a tutorial for every day of the week based around that lipstick, and for all of those lipsticks, I did use this palette. Some of them I did use a different palette and just use like those 2 shades. I will link that video for you because you can get a really in-depth tutorial of all of those looks, and there's a few looks in there exclusively using this palette. I'll have those looks included in like the compilation at the end of this video as well so that you can see like a snapshot of those, but if you want to see a more in-depth tutorial, that's where you can find them. I also have a few Instagram reel tutorials of a few different looks I did with Norvina this month if you want to see those as well. So not including the looks that I did this month where I only used like the 2 lightest shades, I have 22 looks using pretty much exclusively this palette and the bonus singles. So let's go ahead and get into those looks now so you can see how I wore it and you'll be able to see all of the versatility that I got out of this palette this month. So that was my August 1 month 1 palette wrap up video. I hope you enjoyed it. I am going to take the next month off from the 1 month 1 palette because I like to kind of have some time to just use all my palettes freely and randomly. So I'll do that, and I probably will be back for another 1 month 1 palette soon. I'm also toying with the idea of making this into maybe a 2 weeks 1 palette instead of a month, but I don't know, I like having it be a month long because that way I can really start to see progress on the palette, but then at the same time, it's a lot of work putting these 1 month 1 palette videos together and like keeping track of all the looks and making sure I take a photo every day. So I'm thinking about maybe doing a 1 week or 2 week challenge instead. We'll see. I might just switch it up from time to time, but I will be taking September off from the challenge. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. I'll have all the rest of my 1 month 1 palette videos linked below in a playlist so you can watch more if you're into this type of video. But otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and hopefully I will talk to you again very soon in my next video. Bye.